All right, looks like it's up and running. Okay, gang, looks like it's up and running. What I need to do here, check that camera's on, this camera's on, mic here. There's people supposed to be visiting here at 8 o'clock this morning. Somebody left a bag here yesterday. And they asked if they could come and pick it up this morning. So I said yes, not remembering that I was going to be doing this video. So I told them, yeah, okay, I'll open the door at 8 o'clock for you. It's now 8 o'clock. They're not here. I've opened the door a little bit. The bag is there. But if I start recording now and they come banging in, and thanks, Dave. So I'm hoping, come on, lady, I said 8 o'clock. Come and pick up the bag now so I can shut the shutter and get going on this. Whatever, can't be helped, nothing I can do. Just gotta get going. Hope she doesn't make too much noise when she comes. Okay, let's get this started. All the props are ready. Let's do this. Step 1, reach into the camera, don't disturb anything. Find the exposure lock, get out of the view of the viewfinder. Exposure lock on. Record button on. The video is now recorded, main video. Okay, feet in under my phone. I've got a heavy blanket underneath here, because my foot switch is too noisy. Can you hear it? I don't think you can hear it. Foot switch for the teleprompter. B camera. On, recording. Position check. I'm going to be talking about books, and instead of trying to show them to that camera, I'm going to try and show them to this. Oops. I'm going to try and show them to this camera. There's the blue cloth, Dave. When you're talking about books, put them on the blue cloth in the middle, facing that camera. Let's do this. That should do it. Audio. External mic in, gain medium, which is too much for the Twitch stream, but I've put the video down over there. We are on standby. We are now recording. Main video record, check. B-roll camera recording, check. Audio recording, check. Audio here. Hair, makeup, glasses off. No pen in the pocket to bang the microphone. Bald spot visible. Crap, all this stuff to remember, you know, and now I've got to remember what to talk about. We need a crew here to do this, to set this stuff up so I can come and sit down and think about what I'm supposed to be talking about. Unfortunately, that's not the way the world works here. Okay. Let's give this a try. Something's probably gone wrong. I've probably forgotten something. And I'm on a deadline here. It's now 8 o'clock. The shop opens at 9:30. We'll have time for the most 2 takes through this. Let's do this. Audio sync. Good
morning, this is woodblock printmaker David Bull here at my carving bench in our shop in Asakusa, Tokyo. It's David's choice time again, and so quickly this time. It's kind of a surprise for me because it wasn't so long ago that I published the previous one. But there's a reason for this. I was kind of forced into making this one now. That's because it is kind of a sequel to the previous episode, the one about the crepe paper fairy tale books. For a quick recap, for those of you who haven't seen that episode yet, I introduced a series of publications created back here in Japan around the turn of the 20th century. They were small books published in various European languages, and they had as their topic Japanese folk tales. The idea was twofold: to provide training material for Japanese to practice learning the foreign languages, and conversely, to let foreigners learn about aspects of Japanese culture. Now, as we saw in that video a few weeks ago, a very special feature of the books was the fact that they were produced on a kind of crepe paper. If you didn't know, you would think it was actual cloth used for the pages, as we sometimes see these days with books made for infants. But no, it is strong Japanese washi, treated in a way to create this beautiful effect. Now, I didn't want that video to get too long and scattered in its approach, so I kept the focus on the fairy tale books. But today, we'll look at some other publications from the same man, Takejiro Hasegawa, and we'll end up going in quite a different direction. Before we do, though, I want to show you this little item from our collection of old books here at Moko Hankan. This was not produced by Hasegawa, though it certainly shows his influence with a creped cover and with its choice of an old folktale as the theme. This book was clearly not in any way aimed at foreigners, as it is entirely in Japanese. But it seems that the basic idea was to teach people how to read the Roman letters. This is what Japanese call ABCs, Romaji, Roman lettering. The story itself is told in the simple cursive hiragana syllables, which everybody here can read, even children. And each phrase is accompanied by the same words in the Roman letters. Now, the reason for me showing you this book now is this. Let's get a close-up of the lettering here, the A, B, C. The letter shapes are a kind of a parody of what we would think of as normal shapes. They are thick and thin, squeezed and stretched. The carver who cut the block for this page clearly had no idea as to what the letters should actually look like. He was just cutting what to him were random shapes. No taste. Now, this is the environment that Hasegawa was working in when he began publishing his own books in foreign languages, English, French, Spanish, as we saw in the previous video. The traditional craftsmen were lost at sea when it came to the job of actually cutting the lettering. Now, because it didn't matter really to the body of the books, because as we saw in the last thing, the lettering in these books was done with metal type on a printing press. But what about the covers and other places where the standard small body text and metal type that he had available to him in Tokyo just wasn't appropriate? Well, he did have access. Here, let's have a look at this. Where's one? Here, look at this. He did have access to a few styles of larger decorative type, as we see here on the covers of some of the earlier fairy tale books. But I suspect that he felt, as do I, that a book cover created in this way simply doesn't feel right for the content. It's a Japanese story. It's an exotic Japanese story to readers of the day. And so we see around this time the beginnings of Hasegawa-san's experimentation with a different kind of lettering on his publications. Not lettering chosen from whatever standard issue metal type the printing company had on hand, but lettering designed from scratch and then cut and printed in the traditional way. This gave him absolute freedom to style the publications with a completely original look and feel. Now, I haven't got access to hundreds of his books all studied and arrayed in perfect chronological order, but I do have a few of them. I can perhaps figure out a date when this sort of thing happened to start. We have here fairy tale book number 4, and this is done with a cover in bland metal type. And I have here fairy tale book number 5. And this is done in hand-carved, hand-printed woodblock, both illustrations and text. There's the transition from standard metal type to hand carving it, a transition. That seems to be backwards, doesn't it? Let's explain. That's the introduction to today's video. A background on this happens. Now, let's get on with the main course. Okay, the audio should have just come alive, I believe. Camera 1 is on, recording. Audio is on, recording. B-roll camera is on and recording, although I'm having trouble figuring out where I should put the books and stuff here. Anyway. Try and relax, Dave. Try and relax. Okay, what I haven't practiced yet or worked out, I've got what I want to say try and worked out, but how to hold, how to put, where to put them, all that stuff. I'm just going to try and wing it here, and if there's a tragedy, we'll end up starting again. Okay, anyway, let's see, check. Cue cards, rotation, looks good. Next page, previous page, looks okay. Let's do this. Ready? Sound sync. Face, hair, makeup. Mic is in, nothing in the pocket. Actually recording, Is it recording or is it just on standby? Just a minute, please. Yeah, it's recording. Let's try this. Here's the main items that we'll be looking at today. It's a set of 3 books, the Sword and Blossom poems, first published by Hasegawa in 1907. The set I own isn't that very earliest edition. Mine is dated a couple of years later, Meiji 42, which is 1909. But it must have been made actually a little bit later, because when we look closely at the colophon here, we see that the address for the Hasegawa company is a location, Kaminegishi, to which they moved in 1911. So my particular set of books can't be earlier than that. Now, the content of the books is illustrated poetry, with poems from various sources translated into English and paired with illustrations. There's 2 types, sword and blossom poems. The poems are related to nature, the blossom poems. They're ancient, taken from something called the Kokinshu. It's a 10th century anthology of work. While the sword poems, which as the name would apply, are a more militaristic tone, they're more modern. Modern speaking of Japan of 100 years ago. Now, taken as a whole, these books are clearly aimed at catering to the Westerners' fascination at the time for those 2 particular aspects of Japanese culture. This publishing project was initiated just at the time of Japan's victory over Russia. That was its first win over a Western power. And as the researcher Frederick Scharf has put it, Japan is depicted in these books as a nation of people with a special spirit, tenacious in war, devoted to duty, and yet delighted by the beauties of nature. Now, for me, having lived as part of Japanese society for well over 30 years now, and also speaking every day with visitors to this country, hearing about why they came to Japan and what they want to see while they're here, I would have to say this is not the kind of book I would publish today. Japan's cherry blossoms are indeed still a big attraction, but interest in the militaristic aspects of this culture has, of course, faded into the mists, being replaced by long lineups outside the Ghibli Museum. But anyway, as regular viewers know, my interest in the objects that I show you in these presentations isn't so much in the content of the book and the concepts of why they were made. It's their physical aspects, how they were made, and how beautiful they are. That is what I want to learn from them. And then, wherever possible, I want to create such beauty anew in our own publications. So let's dig in and look at them. Now, looking closely at the covers of the books, you might think at first that these are crepe paper books of the same type that I showed in the previous video. But no, these are different. The outside surface of the covers are indeed hand-carved, hand-printed, and then creped, but these are hardcover books, there are boards of some kind in there, giving the books a more typically Western feel. And of course, because the text is in English, they open and turn left to right. Now, another major difference between these volumes and other Japanese books we've looked at in previous videos is the fact that these are not bound with the traditional sewing at the spine, and that has a huge impact on how they are made. Do you remember when I showed you some of the old novels from 1850s, some months ago, how each image spread is actually formed from separate woodblock prints, left and right? In those books, the printed sheets were folded backwards for binding at the spine. And because of that, the left and right part of each image spread were cut and printed from separate woodblocks. These books are different. Each image spread that you see is an actual woodblock print in its own right, full color, carved and printed on a single sheet just as you see it here. Once all the pages in the book were finished, they were then folded inwards and were then glued at the spine, they were then glued at the edges to their neighbors. After the entire package was assembled, the covers would have then been glued on, locking the whole thing into place. Now, this made the printer's work much easier. To make gradations match across both sides of those fairy tale books, can I find an example here? To make gradations and colors match across both sides of the fairy tale books was really different. It was no trivial task. That was two separate woodblock prints. But here, to do such a thing on a single sheet of paper, it was just standard operating procedure for a carver and printer. But the main difference between these books and almost all the others we've looked at previously, and the main point of the exploration today, is the fact that everything you see here on the covers and on every single page inside, every single dot and line, every register, every gradation, every letter of all the text was hand-carved, hand-lettered, pasted onto cherry wood, and then carved and printed. All this text. And let's find some pages here with a lot of text. The whole thing that you see here was hand-carved and hand-printed. Now, this is not movable type, done with, loading little racks with a bunch of metal slugs for each letter and then bang, bang, print, 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 print. Every letter and stroke you see here was carved by hand on wood blocks, just as you see it, one character at a time. The blocks were then inked and rubbed with the Baron to take the impressions. Now, I don't have the original blocks for these same books to show you, but here's an example of an old carved block for printing text, Japanese lettering in this case. The raised areas, the original surface of the wood, will transfer ink onto the paper, while the cutaway regions will not. Now, this was basically how Japanese books had been made for centuries. So for Hasegawa-san to use this same method, carving all the text, for making a book, was not in itself cause for head-scratching astonishment. I've been doing exactly the same recently on my own bench here, carving streams of lettering in Japanese. But for him to use that old method for this book must have vastly increased his costs and reduced his profits. He could easily have produced the books in the modern way that he did with many of the publications. The Favorite Flowers book that we inspected in an earlier video, that was one other such hybrid. The illustrations were woodblock, the text was printed from movable type. But for this Sword and Blossom set, he clearly felt it vitally important to bring his Western readers more closely into his Japanese world. The extra costs, that's a burden he was obviously willing to bear. He had a vision for how to communicate his message, and he went right ahead and did it. So with this book, that decorative lettering style that he had used up to this point on some covers and title pages was codified into a complete set of letters. Of course, full uppercase and lowercase, along with all the necessary punctuation, symbols, and many variants of common letters. He didn't have every A looking exactly the same, and he even created special ways to join letters, T and H or O, things like this, what we today call ligatures. Now, we have no record at all of who did this work for him. Perhaps it was somebody in-house, perhaps it was a hired calligrapher, but that person clearly had a wonderful sense of both sides of this equation, how to incorporate the classical strokes of the fude, the traditional brush used with Sue ink, with how to create readable English lettering. Not only readable lettering, but letter forms that had consistent style and taste. Now, the resulting lettering, once drawn onto paper and pasted onto wood, would have been no problem at all for the carvers of the day to cut smoothly, due to the fact that it all had its birth in a brush and thus tapered and flowed in a completely natural manner. The carvers wouldn't have been able to read what they were carving, but that was irrelevant as long as it looked good. To my knowledge, none of the other Hasegawa books were done this way in their entirety, although the company did continue to use this style of lettering on cover pages and in other places where a decorative appearance was needed. They did calendars and stuff with lettering this way. Now, this is all very interesting, and it's been fun for me to introduce this to you, but did you notice something back at the beginning of this video? The title pages. Let's take a look again. Does that lettering style now look a bit familiar? How did I do that? Did I cut and print a wood block to make those video titles? I didn't have to go to that trouble because I have installed now in my computer a full, beautiful Hasegawa font. Beautiful, beautiful, very carefully worked out reconstruction of the entire set of letter forms, complete with alternate variations of common characters, many ligatures, and including a wide range of the characters required when writing in different Western languages, acute and all that kind of stuff. How did this come about? We pick up our story one morning last June, when, just as I do a few mornings every week, I was running a Twitch live stream from my carving bench right here. I have recently fallen into the habit of sometimes including what we call a show and tell corner in the streams, to try and add a bit of variety to the content, not just carving for 90 minutes. On that day, I was showing the viewers this same set of 3 books that I've shown you today, and of course, I chatted about this lettering. It seemed that the viewers of the stream were very interested in this, and among them was a young man from Finland. I'm not quite sure of the pronunciation of his name. It seems to me to be Markku Muhunen. I'm sorry, I don't quite know. And he has experience at creating original typefaces of his own. He thought this seemed worth exploring, and that very day after watching the stream, he set to work to make an experimental version of the font face, using as source material images from some Hasegawa books that he had found online. That evening, he sent me a trial version. It just had a few letters in it. It wasn't a full A to Z. I found this in my inbox when I woke up, installed it, and I was just blown away. That old Hasegawa lettering style was now available, click, 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 ABC, right there on my own computer. Now, I actually already knew Markku-san because he had visited our shop here at Mokuhankan last summer. He did one of our print parties. We have a picture together here at the end of the party. We took a photo together. So, of course, now we started talking back and forth about this, about how we could move forward with trying to get a full font created. Now, I know that such a thing is a staggering amount of work. I couldn't just say, hey, Markku-san, we'll do this. So I agreed to help sponsor the work and had some of our staff here at Mokuhankan get busy scanning many pages from these very books, making sure we included as many characters and as many versions of each character as possible, uppercase, lowercase, you name it, try and find the Z, the Q, everything, to use for Markku-san to use as source material. Now, the project as a whole, I wanted something really that would be free for anybody to use, but Markku's a serious guy, and he wanted to spend a lot of time and energy really doing a thorough job. Making a font is not trivial. You've got to get the characters well shaped, you've got to get them proper balanced, the line of text has to have a similar, what's the word, it's got to look like the same level of black and white. It would take a lot of time and work. So we agreed that the job could be done at a couple of levels. A standard simple version of the font that would include a well-rounded character set and a selection of common glyphs and ligatures. And then on top of this, as time allowed, Markku-san would create a larger set with more features. Now, as I mentioned, this took place beginning last June, and since then, Markku has been working away in this project step by step. Partway along, I asked him if he could share with us some of the process of doing this. I see he sent me a short video clip of the initial step of getting one of the characters off the printed page and into his software, where he could then get to work properly shaping it. Let's take a look at how that process works now. We see the clip here. So we're going to be cutting my stream there, so I think I better do another sound. Ready? Now, I'd like to see more of that, the subsequent steps of delicately shaping each character to a nice-looking, well-rounded form. Markku-san should start streaming on Twitch, I think. Okay, guys? Anyway, after months of this steady work, the standard version of the font is now ready for use. Those of you who would like to try using Hasegawa can now obtain it from a download page on the Mokuhankan website. I'll of course put all the download and contact information into the description section on this video's YouTube page. Please contact Markku directly for information on the more comprehensive version that he is planning. This is so cool. I mean, ever since I first saw these books, I fantasized about doing this, scanning and working on this font, but the idea has always had to take a backseat to our normal flow of work. So to have this young man jump on board and devote so much time and effort to making it actually happen is really just wonderful. I'm glad to have played a very small part in just helping this thing come together, but of course it was Markku-san himself who has put in all the hours and hours and hours of work to bring this to life. If you enjoy using this download font, please drop him a line and let him know how you feel about this. Now, those of you who are regular viewers of our David's Choice videos know what comes next. Now that the explanations and the talk are done, it's time to sit back and for the next few minutes enjoy some close-up images of these actual books, page by page by page. I hope you've enjoyed this little presentation, and it shouldn't be too long before we have the next one ready for you. Thanks for watching, good night for now, and see you next time. I don't know. It's all going to depend on the B-roll. You know, I'm going to have to do the B-roll and fill, instead of just looking at my talking face, fill it with, you know, the books. This has just been 20 minutes of talking head, plus the thing at the end. But even during the talk, we need to show more of the prints. So this David's Choice, I think I'm really going to have to work hard on the B-roll tonight. Anyway, audio's going off for a minute. Twitch streamers are going to lose the audio here.
Testing. I've boosted the MacBook audio right now. Can you hear me now? I have to keep the MacBook audio off while I'm doing the recording, of course. Can you hear me now? Yes, we're here, okay. Again, I know my card won't take too much, so I've got to take off that take into my computer, and then we'll be doing another take later, I think. But for the moment, I've got to preserve this take. Let me just... Is Markku on the stream today? I didn't, I should maybe turn this here. I don't want to muck up these plugs. That lady still hasn't picked up her bag, you know, so the door's been propped open, all the noise from outside. Okay, cameras are both cleared, ready for another take. Anybody's still there? I'm sorry, guys, to be able to have to ignore you today. I just can't ride herd on this. Sorry. Yeah, anybody's visiting, Soka, Soka, Soka. Anybody visiting here, this is an unusual stream today. We're doing video preparation, so this is not a normal carving printing stream for our Woodblock channel. I'm making a video, and just rather than shut down our stream today, regular viewers usually like to sort of watch while I'm doing this. So Anybody who's just visiting doesn't have a clue what's going on, I'm sorry. Come back later when we're doing normal work. This is Saturday morning here in Tokyo. On Monday morning, there will be a normal work stream happening. Monday morning Tokyo time, that'll be Sunday evening Westerners time. Okay, I'm going to do another take. I'm still hoping that woman's going to come and pick up her bag because it's going to be noisy when she does so. No sign of it. So at the moment, the bag's out there and the shutter's open. Anyway, nothing else I can do. I'm running out of time. I've got to be clear here by 9:47. So I better start another take here. No idea what will happen. So I'm going to shut this audio down. You won't hear my voice until the actual real take starts up again. So here we go. It's audio going down now for a moment.
Okay, audio now recording, gain set to medium as expected. Side camera. We're going to be putting things in the middle of this blue cloth, open to this way. It looks good. Now, last time I didn't have the colophon I tried to find. There it is here. Okay, so we'll use this book for the colophon. Right. So let's keep that at the bottom. We'll put the other two on the stand and keep one here. Glasses off. Side camera B-roll. Activated. Now recording. Teleprompter setting. Page advance, page back. Looks okay. I got this heavy bedding underneath to keep the noise down. Can you hear the tiny sound from outside? It sounds like somebody sweeping. It's actually somebody cutting. It's the ice man. He's delivering ice to one of the bars next door. They make drinks with handmade, hand-delivered ice. Hand-carved woodblock prints. Handmade ice. Come to Japan. Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. Again, check. Video on, audio on, B-roll camera on. I don't know what I'm talking about. Take two. Hair, makeup. I think it's all good to go. Let's do this. Audio sync. Here's the main item that we will be looking at today. It's a set of 3 books, the Sword and Blossom Poems, first published by Hasegawa in 1907. Now the set I own isn't that very earliest edition. Mine is dated a couple of years later, Meiji 42, which is 1909. But it must have been made even a bit later, because when we look closely at the colophon back here, we see that the address listed for the Hasegawa company is a location, Kami Negishi, to which they moved in 1911. So my set of books can't be earlier than that. Now the content of the books, let's get to an open page here. The content of the books is illustrated poetry with poems from various sources translated into English and paired with illustrations. The poems related to nature, the blossom poems of the title, they are ancient, taken from an old book called the Kokinshu, a 10th century anthology of such work. While the sword poems, find an example here,
The sword poems, which as the name would suggest have a more militaristic bent, are more modern. Modern meaning modern of the Japan of 1907. Taken as a whole, they are clearly aimed at catering to Westerners' fascination at that time for these two particular aspects of Japanese culture. Now, this publishing project was initiated just at the time of Japan's victory over Russia, its first win, as you would have it, over a Western power. And as the researcher Frederick Scharf has put it, Japan is depicted in these books as a nation of people with a special spirit, tenacious in war, devoted to duty, and yet delighted by the beauties of nature. Now, for me, having lived as part of Japanese society for well over 30 years now, and speaking every day with visitors to this country, hearing about why they came to Japan and what they want to see while they're here, I have to say that this is not the kind of book I would publish today. Japan's cherry blossoms are indeed still a big attraction, but interest in the militaristic aspects has, of course, faded into the mists, being replaced by long lineups outside the Ghibli Museum. But anyway, as regular viewers know, my interest in the objects I show you in these presentations isn't so much in the content, the emotional content of the books and prints. It's in their physical aspects, how they were made and how beautiful they are. That is what I want to learn from them, and then, wherever possible, I want to create such beauty anew in our own publications. So let's dig in. I got the side camera ready here. Now, looking closely at the covers of the books, you might think at first that these are crepe paper books of the same type that I showed you in the previous video, but no, these are different. The outside surface of the books are indeed hand-carved, hand-printed, and then creped, but these are hardcover books. There are boards of some kind in there, giving the books a more typically Western feel. And of course, as the text is in English, they open left to right. Another major difference between these volumes and other Japanese books we have looked at is that these are not bound with the traditional sewing at the spine, and that has a huge impact on how they are made. Do you remember when I showed you some of the old novels from the 1850s some months ago, how each image spread is actually framed from separate woodblock prints left and right? In those books, the printed sheets were folded backwards for binding at the spine, and because of that, the left and right parts of each image spread were cut and printed from separate woodblocks. These books are different. Each image spread that you see is an actual woodblock print, carved and printed exactly as you see it here. Once all the prints in the set were finished, they were then folded inwards and glued at the edges to their neighboring sheets. After the entire group was assembled, the covers were then pasted on, locking the whole thing into place. Now, this made the printer's work much, much easier. To make the gradations match on those full fairy tale prints here, to make the gradations match across a picture, remember, left and right were carved and printed on different blocks. It was no trivial task to get it to match up. But here, because everything you see on a single page was printed on a single sheet, to do such a thing, get the gradation matching and the colors matching, it was just standard operating procedure. But the main difference between these books and almost all the others we've looked at previously, and the main point of our exploration today, is the fact that everything you see here on the covers and on every single page inside, and every single dot and line on the gradations and the pictures and everything, was all hand-drawn, hand-lettered, pasted onto cherry wood, and then carved and printed by hand. All this text. Now, this is not movable type done by, loading the little racks with a bunch of metal slugs for each letter and then bang, bang, print, print, print. Every letter and stroke you see here was carved by hand on woodblocks, just as you see it, one character at a time. The resulting blocks were then inked and rubbed with the baren in the traditional way. Now, I don't have, of course, the original blocks for these same books to show you, but here's an example of an old carved block for printing text, Japanese lettering in this case. The raised areas, the original surface of the wood, will transfer ink onto the paper, while the cutaway regions will not. Now, this was basically how Japanese books had been made for centuries. So for Hasegawa-san to use this same method, carving all the text, for making a book, was not in itself cause for head-slapping astonishment. I've been doing exactly the same thing recently on my own bench here, carving streams of lettering in Japanese. But for him to use the old method for this entire book must have vastly increased his costs and reduced his profits. He could easily have done the book in the modern way that he did with many of his publications. The Favorite Flowers book we inspected in an earlier video was one such hybrid. The illustrations were woodblock, the text was printed from movable type. But for this Sword and Blossom set, he clearly felt it vitally important to bring his Western readers more closely into his Japanese world. The extra costs were a burden he was obviously willing to bear. He had a vision for how to communicate his message, and he went ahead and did it. So with this book, that decorative lettering style that he had used up to the point on some covers and title pages was codified into a complete set of letters. Of course, full uppercase and lowercase, along with the necessary punctuations and symbols, but also including many variants of common letters. He did A, different A's, E, different E's. And he even created special ways to join letters in combinations, T and H, or O and O, or something like that, what we today call ligatures. Now, we have no record at all of who did this work for him. Perhaps somebody in-house, perhaps a hired calligrapher. But this person clearly had a wonderful sense for both sides of the equation. How to incorporate the classical strokes of the brush, the frile used with traditional sumi ink, with how to create readable English lettering. And not only readable lettering, but letter forms that had consistent style and taste. Now, the resulting lettering, it would have been no problem at all for the carvers of that day to cut smoothly, due to the fact that it had been created with a brush and thus tapered and flowed in a completely natural manner. The carvers wouldn't have had a clue what they were carving. They wouldn't have been able to read this, but that was irrelevant as long as it looked good. To my knowledge, none of the other major Hasegawa publications were done this way in their entirety, although the company continued to use this style of lettering on cover pages and in other places where a decorative appearance was required, calendars and things like that. Now, this is all very interesting and it's been fun for me to introduce this to you, but did you notice something back at the beginning of this video? The title pages. Something look familiar? How did I do that? Did I cut and print a woodblock to make those video titles? I didn't have to go to that trouble because I have the Hasegawa font now installed on my computer. A beautifully and very carefully worked out reconstruction of that set of letter forms, complete with alternate variations of common characters, many ligatures, and including a wide range of the characters required when writing in various Western languages, acute and all that kind of stuff. How did this come about? We pick up the story one morning last June, when, just as I do a few mornings every week, I was running a Twitch live stream from my carving bench. I have recently fallen into the habit of sometimes including a show and tell corner in those streams to try and add a bit of variety to the content, not just carving for 90 minutes. On that particular day, I was showing viewers this same set of 3 books that I have shown you today. And of course, I chatted about the lettering while I did so. It seemed that the viewers of the stream were quite interested in this, and among them was a young man from Finland, Markku Muhunen. I'm not quite sure about the pronunciation of Finnish, I'm sorry. And he has experience at creating original typefaces of his own. He thought this idea seemed really worth exploring, and that very day after watching the stream, he set to work to make an experimental version of the typeface, using as source materials some images from some Hasegawa books that he found online. That evening, he sent me a trial version. He hadn't made the whole A to Z. He just made, a half a dozen different letter forms. I found this in my inbox when I woke up the next morning. I'm like, what? I installed it, I was blown away. I type A, B, C, and this old Hasegawa lettering style is right there coming to life in my own computer. Anyway, so it turned out I actually knew Markku-san already because he visited our shop here at Mokuhankan last summer. He did one of our print parties. We even got a little photograph together sitting here at my printing bench. So of course we now started talking back and forth about this, about how we could move forward with the project, trying to get a full font created. Now, I agreed to help sponsor the work to a little degree, and I had some of our staff here at Mokuhankan get busy scanning pages from these very books, making sure we included as many variations of each character as possible, uppercase, lowercase, trying to find the Z. There is one in here for Markku to use as source material. I kind of wanted something that would, be available for anybody to use. And Marco went along with this. But he's also a very serious guy. He wanted to spend the time and energy to really do a thorough job, getting all the characters well shaped and properly balanced. It's something that would take a lot of time and work. So we kind of talked about having the job done at 2 levels. A clean standard version of the font that would include a well-rounded character set and a selection of common glyphs and ligatures. And then on top of this, as time allowed and as as he got into it, he would create a larger set with more features. As I mentioned, this took place beginning last June, and since then, Marco has been working on the project step by step. Partway along, I asked him if he could share with us some of the process of doing this, and he sent me a short video clip of the initial step of getting one of the characters off the printed page into his software, where he could then start to work properly, shaping it. Let's take a look at this short clip here. We're going to cut there, so I'll need a new audio sync, I think. I'd like to see more of that, the subsequent steps of delicately shaping each character to a nice-looking, well-balanced form. Marco-san, I think he should start streaming on Twitch, I think. I'd sign up to watch for one, for sure. Anyway, after months of his steady work, the standard version of the font is now ready for use. Those of you who would like to try using Hasegawa on your computers can now obtain it from a download page on the Mokuhankan website. I'll of course put all the download and contact information into the description section on this video's YouTube page. Please contact Marco directly for information on the more comprehensive version that he is cooking and planning. This is so cool. I mean, ever since I first saw these books, I fantasized about doing this. We can scan and work on the font. I could figure out how to do that. But the idea always had to take a back seat to our normal flow of work. So to have this young man come on board and devote so much time and effort to making this actually happen is just so wonderful. I'm glad to have played a very small part in helping it come together, but of course it's Marco-san himself who put in all the hours to bring this to life. If it turns out you want to try this and you enjoy using this font, please drop him a line through one of those links and let him know. Now, those of you who are regular viewers of our David's Choice videos know what comes next. Now that the explanation and the talk are kind of done, it's time to sit back and for the next few minutes, let's enjoy some close-up images, page by page by page, from these beautiful, beautiful books. I hope you've enjoyed this little presentation, and it shouldn't be too long before we have the next video ready for you. Thanks for watching this morning. Bye for now, and I'll see you next time. This is the point where we find out that I forgot to press the button to start the audio recording or something, but it seems like I'm okay. Okay, I'm going to turn off the audio here. Your Twitch audio will go blank for a minute till I turn it back on over on the computer, so just a minute.
Okay, put the audio back on the MacBook. Here we go. What time is it now? It's 9 o'clock. I am cooked. There's no way I have time to do another hit at this. Anybody still here? Okay, gang, thanks very much. I know. Yes, does Jed do his line work with the brush? Yes, he certainly used to for all the Ukiyo-e Heroes main prints we made. These days he's perhaps working a lot more on a monitor rather than with a brush. But yes, Jed has brush skills. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. The takes are different. I'm making it up. I'm not making it up. I've got a teleprompter here, but I'm not. It's not word by word by word. Sometimes there's a full sentence when there's a specific point I really, really want to get made. And sometimes it's a hyphen with an idea, just say the idea. And you heard me stumble a couple of times because I got my foot wrong on the foot switch. I went back a page instead of up a page, so it's not perfect. But whatever. And if you've been worried about the bad audio here on the computer, don't worry about it. It's all different audio recorded for the video. Is Marcus, and Marcus sounds probably gone to bed, of course, whatever. Marumuju, is that Marku-san? I guess so, Markumujin. I'm sorry about how to pronounce your name, you know. We've never actually, I don't know how to do that. But, whatever. Okay, anyway, it is, like I said, it's 9 o'clock now, and any minute now, chaos is going to come. The employees are going to come. You know what happens here. So I think we are done for now. I don't know if this is going to be a good take. I have no choice. I've got to clean up all this stuff. I don't know if you guys know what's going on here, just to give you a little, I need to move this a little bit. What we've been doing here, I'm of course sitting at my, I'm sitting at my carving bench. Opposite me, there's the B-roll camera, has been looking down. I kept the shutter open because that lady was going to come and pick up a book. She still hasn't. We have a light thing in front of me. And I have, maybe I can, oh I can't, the cord's not long enough. Hang on a sec. Let me try and do this. Here we are. If I get in front of the teleprompter, okay, you can see what's happening, right? The camera is behind the teleprompter. I don't have the towel. There's the teleprompter itself with the camera behind it. And if I can just try with two hands in just a second. Before I hit the record button, oops. Now, dark towel goes over the top of the teleprompter, of course, so that from my point of view, when I'm sitting at my bench here, I can see the thing. And I've got a foot switch that scrolls it up and down. And there you go. So that's the setup. There's the rest of the shop, which we can open soon. And I have got to get all this crap cleaned up now for the next few minutes. Okay, so that's it. Okay, I'm out of here, guys. I'll be back normal. I'll be back Monday morning, 8 o'clock Japan time. That'll be Sunday evening for many of you. And I have got a crap load of cleaning up, there's a print party coming at 10. Thanks for watching. Any new visitors here, sorry about all the chaos today, but that's how things work. See you Monday. We have window. So long for now. Stop streaming.